I feel like I've seen enlightenment, and I thought it was going to be about levitating and telekinesis, and it's actually just about an increased awareness of how annoying I am.
UFO sighting last night?
I thought I spotted a really strange behaving UAP. It was moving very fast, and its lights were all white, and they were flashing very fast.
Wow.
Yeah.
It was a lightning bug. We're sitting in the hot tub, and she's like, "Holy shit! Oh my god! Did you see that? That went so fast. That was not a plane. The light just went across the sky." And I turned around, and a couple feet above the grass were a couple of lightning bugs chattering around.
It was high. It seemed like it was flying far away, but it was actually just flying between two trees.
Well, I mean, there were other ones I saw on the ground that I was like, "Oh, this."
Oh, you missed it. Well, so then you don't know. It could have been.
Well, then I looked up and saw another one or two fly.
It's always in a hot tub. Do you remember the time we were at a hot tub in an Airbnb, and I was like, "What kind of bird is that?"
It was a plastic bag in the tree. That was so funny. And you were like so confused, like, "Whoa, what?" You pointed like, "What kind of bird is that?" And it was like in a weird part of town, and so it was kind of like trashy, and it was just like is a plastic bag that had gotten caught in the tree.
Yeah, and the thing that's funny is this was before my discovering of nature. This is before exchanging energy with you caused me to discover nature. I was pretty dissociated before that. And so I think we'd only been together like a year at that point. I was like trying to bond, Or like impress you with me noticing birds.
Noticing trash in a tree.
Which is far more my frequency. No wonder I noticed it.
For anybody that doesn't know, Jess is as blind as a bat. It's adorable,
I can actually see, but I stared at the sun while high on meth many years ago, and so my macula is burned, which means I can see it, but I can't see fine details.
Right.
And so it causes kind of, if there's too many brunettes in the same television show, I can't tell them apart. And now that I'm like over 40 something, it's...
Do you know what I look like?
I don't know. You're really hot. Are you hot?
There was one time we were driving around looking for food, and we were looking for a burger. It was a place that had a couple of places called Farm Burger, and we stopped at a light. And she's like, "Oh, look, there's one right there." And I look over, and it's Farm Bureau Insurance. Which I gotta admit, that's pretty close. It's like farm with a B bureau, but
yeah.
It's so funny because I was like, "Are you talking about?" I don't see it. I don't see a farm burger. She's like, "Right there," and I'm like, "That's a insurance place. I don't know if they sell burgers."
Yeah, we really got to take care of your eyes because I don't know what we're gonna do.
Yeah, it's nice comedic relief having you around and pointing things out that are not the things that you say.
Yeah, you don't want me to be an eyewitness.
Yeah. I'm sure there's so much of that going on with actual UAP, UFO sightings. It's like somebody's just seeing it's like actually a comet or it's a lightning bug.
If you weren't there, I would have whipped out my phone and got a video of it, which would have been very funny because it might have still looked like a UAP when I zoomed in on it.
I imagine, yeah, from your perspective, if it's kind of blurred and your like distant vision isn't very good, like that would look like a UAP for sure, but it was definitely a lightning bug. We're in lightning bug season right now, so
when am I going to get to see a drone? I've seen plenty of stars doing funny stuff.
I'm not so sure, and I don't know. This is maybe a weird take, but like I've seen things like anomalies in the sky before in my life, but I don't know if it's a thing you want to see necessarily. Like the more I like understand and learn about reality and then just the whole UAP, UFO phenomena, like it's a specific frequency that you're on when you see them. And, you know, there's the whole CE5 thing where you put an intention out to see them and you see them. But like, what is that frequency that you're getting onto? I don't know if it's good or bad necessarily, but like it is opening a door to something that I think is always in one's best interest, if not, you know, fully aware of the phenomena, the matrix in general, like what we're in. Like I don't know. I guess I'm a pretty like, I have a pretty skeptical mind on a lot of things now. Just the more I learn that I still use my intuition mostly. Like, does it feel good to me? Does it feel right? Or is it just like a lesson that I need to learn? But even with all these things going around, like the Monroe Institute has these, I forget what they're called, but the tapes that you listen to that help you kind of get out of your body in an astral realm and help lucid dreaming. And there's some other people that have made tapes that are like similar to that. And they're all like binaural frequencies. And I've used certain ones before and I've had like, you know, moderate effects from it. But I can't help to think like, especially with the stuff on YouTube, like the sleep tapes that we've used sometimes they're relaxing, but then sometimes my sleep is a little bit like scattered and I don't feel like I get deep sleep. And so there's a part of me that is kind of like, I don't know who's making this. Like, I can't talk to the person who actually made this to discern where are they at and when they're making this.
Right.
What's their level of awareness? How many kind of negative frequencies could be in there that do have an effect? They put you into an astral realm, but like what astral realm? What are you moving into? Is it a part of you? Are you in control? Or is this some deep deception, you know, within the spiritual knowledge and stuff? So I've begun to have like kind of a skeptical eye on everything. And if it feels right, I'll experiment with it and try it. But if it starts to have some kind of confusing effect, then I'm like, I don't know where it's coming from. And, the Monroe Institute is something that's like highly coveted and highly trusted. But when you look into that story, it was originally, the CIA was very involved in it. And, Robert Monroe's long gone now, so somebody else has taken it over. And I've heard many great stories that are mostly positive. But again, it's like the level of awareness is going to dictate your experience. And I think that kind of actually transitions into the stuff we were going to talk about, music again. But.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think a topic to talk about, especially with the things we've discussed recently, is spiritual Puritanicalism, that according to autocorrect is not a word. But we have a lot of puritanical programming because we're coming out of a lot of tribal programming. And the reality that we're living in right now is this kind of Venn diagram of the cross of sleeping phoenix coming in and the cross of planning going out. And we have so much. I'm like so deep in this shit right now because I'm teaching this course. So I'm in study mode. But the Puritanicalism of the cross of planning was that there had to be an established good and bad so that the tribe, the collective, could have a metric to stick to. And then we kept the metric there through social pressure of like a shared moral compass. Is that making sense? So like in ways in which the in-group was white people, it was like that culture was expected, or the in-group was Christians, and so that moral compass was imposed. And so, when you think about how you should dress and whether or not it's modest and the kind of music you should be listening to, and you think of like the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, like even when I was a teenager in the 90s, it was like there was still a lot of puritanical pressure on music. And, musicians were in and out of court over whether or not their shit was suitable for work or whatever. This is where we got like the parental advisory shit on. It's just the way that we have kept the culture cohesive in the cross of planning is through puritanical pressure of whatever we deem pure at the time. So now in comes this very different energy of the cross of sleeping phoenix, but we still have that conditioning. And now instead of you need to be modest and a virgin when you get married, it's like you need to be high vibe. You need to make sure there's no chemicals in your food. You need to, and because we still have that conditioning, we're in this weird pocket where, most of what spirituality is chaos. It's not systemized. It can't apply to every single person. It isn't all or nothing. It isn't any of those things. Like spiritual energy is the opposite of what we've been in.
Yeah.
And so we still, and I'm very subject to this, I'm also very subject to getting periodically superstitious. That I just go through phases where I become superstitious and then I kind of come back out of it. I've always had some, it's probably the autism, but some OCD type things where I just get into my head that I have to fucking open and shut the door, or I have to whatever. I can do that about spirituality stuff where, and that will translate to, I won't listen to a certain music because I'll just have kind of a glitch in my brain tell me I'm going to manifest that if I listen to it, which I don't actually believe. I think that it's something to be aware of as we're coming out. Like the energy we're going into is very personal and individual, but we are still wired tribal and collective. And that's why the second you quit smoking weed, the first thing you think is how everyone else needs to quit smoking weed. Or the second you learn something, it's like it becomes this kind of homogenized thing. And also, as we move into individuality, I think we are naturally going to become very suspicious of everyone else. And we've been watching this slowly creep in for a while, just on the topic of fences and stuff. Like, the humans are becoming like increasingly more introverted, and less interested in associating with their neighbors or whatever. And that's been happening for decades, right? And so you combine those two things together and you get this sort of like spiritual skepticism or kind of conspiratorial belief where just absolutely everything takes on this tone of deception. And I think distortion is a better word because I just don't think everything has a fucking giant agenda to it. I think that there are people on different frequencies, beings on different frequencies. Everyone's trying to get their needs met. And so like parasites be parasiting. That's just what they fucking do. You know, emotionally immature people, they have a script that they follow to get their needs met. And like me as an individual, I'm just supposed to determine whether or not my body likes it. And so whether or not the Monroe Institute and other people liked it doesn't matter, because that is a systematic way of, there's a tribal way of looking at it. It could work for everyone else. And the second I try it, it feels gross in my body and I don't do it. But also I have noticed that with the body being the truth tell, and this is the same, you know, we're going to go back to the animal conversation. It's the exact same thing. It's like the negotiating over the details of whether or not our bodies are designed to eat meat or our bodies are like that's all fucking tribal puritanical thinking. It's all thinking we have to get on the same page. And the reality is I eat meat. It makes my body feel good. I eat the other stuff. It doesn't. That's the end of the conversation. I don't give a fuck about your moral compass about it. I don't give a fuck about scholars and what they've studied about whatever. When I can eat the other stuff without fucking my joints feeling like they're on fire, I'll do that. I don't care. I don't actually prefer needing to eat the most fucking expensive option that's a pain in the ass to get. I don't, but like it just comes down to, oh, my body doesn't like that. But we're so conditioned that we have to like then unroll this, and I'm horrible about this, like unroll this like list of excuses for why. And it's like, it's because we still have that conditioning that like, if I do this and it's right for me, it has to be right for everyone. And then I have to be pure. And you see so much of this in the like, and I've dealt with a lot of this. I dealt with when my mom got rheumatoid arthritis and I went through like a midlife crisis at 30 in my early 30s because she's only 22 years older than me. I learned all about the food system and everything else. And then I was like a germaphobe, but with food. Like I was in that like extreme wellness before it was a thing that it is now. I was like an organic purist. I wouldn't eat if it wasn't organic, you know? And I was like, I was a waitress and my husband was a construction worker. It was like not easy to pull that off. It was like all of our money was going to organic food. And then I was buying food at co-ops. It was my entire personality for a while. And then I realized a pattern after a while where it's like, this thing you thought was good is actually bad. And this thing you thought was good is actually bad. And then I was eating things that were allegedly good and my body hated them. That's when I was a vegan for a while. I was a raw vegan after that. And eventually I was like, oh, I'm very limited by what my body is okay with. And I had to eventually learn, like, it kind of doesn't matter what anyone else says. It kind of doesn't matter what the fucking story or the narrative is behind it. It just is like, does it work for my body? Yes or no? You know?
And then I think it's also to be like, because sometimes it is helpful to, if you're open-minded about things, it's like you're doing something that works and resonates for you right now, but then also being open to hearing other people's opinions of what works for them. And if it kind of resonates, it's like, oh, interesting, I'm going to try that because that is a very convincing argument. There's data or whatever to back it up. Cool, let me try that and see if it works. And sometimes it does. And then it's like, okay, I've widened my awareness. Now I will adopt that. But that's still an individualized like decision being made. And so I think it's helpful, especially right now with how many people, how we're all networked together and can share our, you know, perspectives and our experience with something. And especially people that are specialized in this new like kind of biohacking the body. Like I have learned a lot that I will try and adopt because I'm open-minded about it and I'm always seeking more balance. So but then I will try things and sometimes try to force it into my reality because I am being biased and wanting to be convinced that it works because somebody else was really convincing by it. But actually my body's kind of rejecting it. Like even just recently we did this. I haven't had pork forever because of a thing a long time ago where I realized, like when I was vegan, the consciousness of pigs is like very, and just the genetics of pigs are very close to humans. And that glitched me where I was like, well, I don't want to eat humans. And so it's very close. So I'm going to keep that out of my diet, and hadn't had pork for years. But kind of on the back end of our conversation about veganism and meat eating a couple podcasts ago, I was just searching for some other information about it to kind of understand some of the details, and came across some information that was like actually really convincing about why it's okay and even maybe beneficial to eat pork. And just shortly, the data was like, from this perspective of the earth it's like our mother, we come from the earth. And so it provides everything we need, and it provides the creatures that are at a lower awareness, and it's providing them to sustain its children that have free will, which would be humans, to give sustenance to them. And when you actually eat something that is close to your genetics, but is not obviously a human, but its conscious level has more data within its being, that when you eat that, it's actually like your consciousness has to eat other things. And you could say that's like knowledge and experience. But actually eating pork, because it is so close, you get consciousness gets more consciousness from it. And so there's like, just on data level, it's like you get more sustenance from pig. That's like the short version. It is really compelling to me when I read all through it, and I was like, whoa, that's actually breaking some of my preconceived notions on like why I don't eat pork. It was like a paradox. And so I was like, interesting. I'm going to try bacon. I'm going to try pork now just to see what my body feels. And so I did, sure enough, like when I went grocery shopping, I didn't tell Jessa, and I brought back like pork bacon, and I was like, I read this thing, I kind of want to try it. And she was like, whoa, holy shit, you're usually you're like against pork. You will not eat if it's just pork. And so we tried it, and I gave it a couple days. Like we had bacon in the morning, and then I got a burger the next day, and usually like take the bacon off, or I ask for no bacon. And I was like, yeah, leave the bacon on. And after a couple of days, I didn't like it. I don't know. It didn't make my body feel good. And maybe that was because my body's not used to it. And I should stick with it longer. But I tried, and there was something that like, it wasn't my mind and my biases that were in the old habit, like refusing it. It didn't sit right with my body. And so then I stopped doing it. But I think it's just really important to have an open mind, and if you're convinced on something, try it. And it's even with the Monroe tapes. It's like, I haven't tried it because I am a little skeptical of like mass consensus all jumping into that, and seeing the history of it. The CIA co-opted it at one point. Who's to say they didn't adjust the frequencies, that it's more of a distorted frequency coming through that can, for some people, be experienced as like an elevation. But trial and error, it's just not, there is no good or bad. I think it's just like whatever we're pursuing at the time that is individual to you, that's the compass. And again, back to the thing, I mean, I've said sometimes before, that the Wave series talks about Cassiopaeans. One of the basic things is like everything is lessons, and there's no good or bad thing. Some lessons are difficult, and we would label those bad or negative, like doing psychedelics and going into psychosis. We would say, oh, that's dangerous, that's bad. But that's a really great lesson if you can follow through and get the lesson and not glitch and feel grief and call yourself bad, and that I've off the trail now and I'm descended into psychosis. It's a really great lesson, actually, if you can get out of it. And so having this perspective of everything is lessons has been really helpful for me, and allowing myself to, descend into some dead end. That's what the Feel Free was. going back to cannabis, it was once I came out of that, I feel like I really engaged a new lesson and am integrating that. And so the open-mindedness, I think, from that perspective of everything as a lesson is very helpful. And it makes it not so quick to judge it as good or bad, you know, in that puritanical way.
Yeah, I think because you're reading a lot of the Cassiopaean stuff. And I think you've been digesting enough of the Cassiopaean stuff at this point to start to see, like when we both have open heads and ajnas in in human design. And so we are both really super open-minded and love to take in information, and then we get pretty programmed by it for a second. I, at this point, take in more information that's like cultural stuff. And so I will deep dive maybe like a social belief and take it on and take on its rigidity and its Puritanicalism stuff, and then eventually work through it and land in my own balance. You're more attracted to this kind of spiritual knowledge.
Like esoteric kind of.
Yeah, so like I will take on some rigid social beliefs, or I don't know, and early in our relationship I had fallen into a lot of like puritanical social justice kind of perspectives that are just actually much of it victim consciousness traps, and you know, was very rigid and puritanical in that, because a lot of that stuff is very rigid and puritanical. And then it just eventually I realized like, oh, a lot of this is loops though, because it's just kind of recreating the same hierarchy with different people at the top.
Yeah.
But then it never the loop never stops, because it's like, well, except for unless you're like this, then you're on top of this person, but then you need to listen to this person and this person's that, you know, and it never fucking stops. So I eventually found my way out of it. Took what resonated and left the rest. But when you're in that, you do care, when you're like deep diving with a group, right? Like you immerse yourself in a community, you start to take on their frequency. And I think that people who are very into that Cassiopaean stuff are deeply suspicious of deception and kind of looking for deception everywhere.
Yeah.
And so in the time that you've been really into that, I know you well enough to know that you're holding this stuff, you're not holding this stuff very tight. But then the way that you've communicated sometimes on the podcast sounds like you are a lot more rigidly suspicious of stuff, and you'd have to know Mark to know that like he'll be rigid on Tuesday about something, and by Saturday he's like, actually I thought about it and it's not really that. But because you've been in this you were on Time Travelers when we started this podcast, and then now you're like, you think half of that shit's bullshit, and then
no, I think it's still very real.
Yeah, but the guy, you're like,
it's settled. It's like I look at it, it's that open ajna. It's like I'll take on a certain rabbit hole, and then I run everything of my experience in life and everything that I've known before through that filter, and that then opens up some of those paradoxes that I had previously carried, and everything like lifts up. And it's hard because it's hard to stay grounded in it, because all of a sudden everything that used to ground me is up for grabs of maybe it's deception, maybe it's wrong. And so for those moments, I am running everything through that filter, and I'll sound very binary or one-sided. But as I move through it, and this one has been a long one, I'll start dropping some of the like rigidity. And for that, what's his name? Jason Giorgiani, that kind of first opened the door of these like Nordic time travels, Nazi time travelers. That was so interesting, and it did lift everything. And then that kind of, at the same time, I had heard about the Wave series, but I was digging through both books. I finished the Giorgiani book and a lot of his podcast, and it opened the door for the Wave series stuff, which also has time traveling in it, but much more, I don't know what the word is. It's like, it's just much more macro, and where Jason Giorgiani is like very honed in on that and kind of has a lot of biases in it that were interesting at the time, but that's what all settled out, like some of the rigidity to it. But it very much informed the Wave series and helped open that door to those concepts that I may have previously just wrote off as like some woo-woo channeled bullshit. But now this has been the longest time that I've been on this like in a certain rabbit hole with the Cassiopaeans, just because there's so much information. I mean, it's like an 8-series book for the Wave series, but then Laura Knight Yazek has a ton of other books that I find very interesting as well. And then just the transcripts of the channeling that started in 94, I believe, and is still ongoing. Like every month or twice a month, they do current channels on current stuff that's going on. And so it's like an encyclopedia of information, which keeps, I keep throwing, it's expanding and expanding. And I think when I'm while I'm in the rabbit hole, trying to communicate the information that I find fascinating, it can sound very binary and kind of don't trust anything, there's deception everywhere, which is true, but it's not true for everybody where they're at. And it can sound very scary and just kind of rigid and puritanical in certain ways. And I'm aware of that. But when I'm in the rabbit hole, like I'm so excited about it, I want to communicate as much as I can.
Right.
And I think what you just said is probably helpful for people to hear that are maybe taking me very seriously. I'm just trying to like communicate paradox in the best way I can, that I have a certain feeling on things that I've had for a while, but now I've got this new information and I'm wanting to try to seed that in there too, to say, well, this is true, but there's also this that's like creates a paradox with it. And it's just something to consider. And that's not going to resonate with certain people. It just means it's like, we don't need to go there, because it does, like when I'm in these rabbit holes, I'm not very grounded. I have to like work extra hard to stay grounded. Whether that's physically like out in nature, getting my circadian rhythm right, and a lot of water and things like that help me like get through it. But I think while I'm talking about it it can sound schizoid a bit.
Well, it's just like it becomes a filter through which you're seeing the world. Very similar to, when I was like puritanically thinking everything was poison, or when I was puritanically thinking everything was racist, and it's like you can't, I'm managing every word that comes out of your mouth, and I'm Googling every figure of speech, and I'm like, everything's running through that lens. Then you start to operate different in the world, because you can make anything fit if you're running it through the filter, And the reason that the puritanical stuff, I think, has to go. Now, whatever, we're going to work our way through it. It's a gradient, it's a cusp that we're in. But the Puritanicalism just doesn't have a place in the new energy. It's a trap. And just by trap, I mean, you just get stuck in a loop. You can't progress. You can't move forward, because the energy that we're going into is chaotic. It's not quantifiable. It doesn't fit in a box. That's why I just like the shift from the age before the cross of planning was like the cross of consciousness, and it was the cross of rulership before that. And if you look at those constructs, it just makes so much sense. You go, oh yeah, well, the cross of rulership would lead to the cross of consciousness, would lead to the cross of planning. It's like they are energies that refine one another. And then you get record scratch, cross of sleeping phoenix is just like, all right, non-physical, just consciousness-based chaos, no order. Like, it's the fucking opposite. And so we're going into that energy while still trying to apply
rigid puritanical.
Yeah, I think the hardest thing is trying to apply that tribal systematic. Like, it's so hard for myself included. Like, it's so hard to get it through our heads. First of all, that hierarchy doesn't exist in the way that, like, we equate hierarchy with good and bad.
Right.
Period. Is there a natural order of things? Yes. Does that natural of order, is that synonymous with your worth or your what? No, that is this colonization in the cross of planning, you know?
I think too, just to add to the, there's something with like this networking kind of thing where you share your own individual perspective, and that's a constant evolving thing that we're growing and learning more about ourselves. But you share that, and there are like somewhat like little communities being built in that, let's say it's like across the Sleeping Phoenix, or I'm seeing it's like kind of synonymous with the idea of fourth density, a new reality, a new video game that is half ethereal, half physical. And so you have to let go of certain aspects of the material realm, all the tribal planning, all of that, like rigidity, one way or the other, homogenization. But we are still going to be physical, and that's through that individual lens of giving your perspective and sharing it with others. And then people that resonate with that a lot are like, for the moment, temporarily like in your community that you're building on this cosmic cauliflower or disco ball. And like, that's what I see with this Cassiopaean stuff. There's a networking there. There's a forum. There's a huge thing that when I've gone into the forum, I resonate with some things, and some things I can see are very rigid and binary and puritanical, and I don't enjoy it. And so it's like the Cassiopaean, Laura Knight, and all of that is like building a community in fourth density on a different side of the disco ball. And maybe whatever we're doing here in this podcast and within your Patreon is building people that just resonate with what you're saying, and they have something to share too. And that's what I love about like some of these comments and people that I do sessions with. Like, they're sharing stuff of their experience that I'm learning too, and going, oh, I really resonate with that. I'm going to take that too and work on that and do some research, and maybe I'll drop it. And then some people share stuff that I'm like, oh, that's really interesting. That doesn't resonate with me, but cool.
Yeah.
And keep sharing that. And so then that's like, I see the Cassiopaeans as like there's so much that is like in resonance with me, and I think what we're doing, like seeing that through line with Cross of the Sleeping Phoenix is fourth density and what they're talking about. And human design, as much as I've looked on that forum, and they don't seem to like human design because specifically it came from this guy called Ra, and he just channeled it, and who knows who the channel was. And so I get it. There's a lot of deception there. Interesting. And I've thought about that in my own understanding of human design. Like, where is this all coming from? How much of it is deception? And I would say pretty much everything has got an element of deception in it, because Laura is the main channel of the Cassiopaeans.
So distortion.
Distortion. Sorry. Yeah. It's like there's going to be some stuff that's just not going to be towards a, universal truth, if you want to call it that, or some kind of like universal law and order.
It's not neutral when it's coming from someone with biases.
Yeah. And so you always have to be like open with that. But for me, human design is a really great detailed blueprint for density, and it's about empowering the individual. It isn't tribal. And so there's like, for me, everything I'm learning about the Cassiopaeans, when I use human design to understand it, they go hand in hand. They're really tied together. But some stuff doesn't work with human design, some stuff doesn't work for the Cassiopaeans, and so you just have to discern that. But I think that's this power of like moving into the fourth density is about networking and sharing what people's certain perspectives and takes are on things via their experience through the ascension and 3D reality. And that's really helpful, but it's not going to ever be all right one way and all wrong the other.
Right.
And so I look at us as like what we're building. We're just building a kind of different community in fourth density that's like close to the Cassiopaeans, but is holding a different resonance, and that's valid. And they're all supposed to be unique and different. So they're not, one's not all right and wrong. There's really helpful information to exchange from each community. And on that level, just individually too, like what is going on in the community you've built and that we are kind of building with this. I love it when people leave a comment that is either a challenge on something that makes us kind of think about it differently, or just doesn't resonate and kind of validates what we're doing. It's the sharing that is really helpful, and not seeking for ever something to be 100% correct and applicable.
Yeah. And that's where I think we are all still, us included, still working through the It's like deep, deep conditioning, you know? Our nervous systems are wired to keep the tribe happy. I'm actually like this week in the upcoming, the 2027 class, we are talking about the 37th gate as a way of life versus the 55th gate as a way of life. And the 37th gate is about bargains. It's about keeping the peace. It's just tribal. So the way of life, which, you know, when you're born into reality, you are just programmed to believe that this is what it is to be a human. So what it is to be a human is to be a part of tribes. And so those tribes, they're not everyone in the world. They are your family, your local community, your internet community, like whatever groups you join, whatever groups you feel innately a part of, your gender, your race, whatever you equate with you being a part of. And it's the entire way of life is about how you fit into that, how you bring your thing to the group, how you are seen, how your reputation, like all of that is what you think the way of life is. The 55th gate is about how do you feel and guiding your life through vibes. And so the 37th gate's about commitment. The 55th gate is about not committing to things. The 37th gate is like, I said I was going to do this, so I'm going to stick it out. I said I was going to be in this relationship, I'm going to stick it out. I said I was going to take this job, I'm going to stick it out. The 55th is like, man, it just feels off, it just doesn't feel right. And when you look at like the journey that humanity is currently on, we are collectively losing the ability to participate in the bargain and collectively losing the ability to do things we don't want to do. This is why you have people who are like, I went to college and built this career and I made a lot of money and I just like literally cannot get my body to go there anymore. I cannot do another day in this relationship. I cannot be the person other people want me to be. That's why we're talking about masking. That's why we're like, all these themes are the shift to the 55th gate, where we become individuals being just guided by this energy that we don't get to decide. The 55th is also in the Gene Keys is about victim consciousness versus like freedom. It's about your perspective. The way of life is becoming something very etheric and personal and emotional and vibes based. And it really separates you from the tribe. It takes away your ability. The shift takes away your ability to keep the tribe happy. But we still have that conditioning telling us that is where safety is. That's what I think this particular shift in the way of life is, the loneliness, the melancholy, because the 55th is a melancholic gate. I think I could be wrong about that, but it's the glass half empty, glass half full. It's your perspective. And so in 10 years, and especially for people who are younger, who'd never really participated in this bargain, in 10 years, the way of life is being guided by your vibes, But right now in this shift, people are being pushed to be guided by their vibes, but their mind is going, what is everyone going to think? Yeah. Am I contributing enough? Am I doing enough? Or, it's a huge part of this culture that I observe on TikTok and also felt like I was involved in for a little bit, is the tribe thinking that accountability, because accountability is also a part of that, the tribe trying to hold everyone else accountable and ad nauseum to no benefit of anyone. That shit worked before. You used to be able to hold your politicians' feet to the fire. You used to be able to leave a nasty review and get a corporation to do what you want. That's all 37th gate. That's gone. That's why none of it's working now. The accountability is a personal question. It's not your job to hold other people accountable. Yeah. And so as we learn things that we are each individually being guided to by this energy of like, you're drawn to what you're drawn to, I'm drawn to what I'm drawn to, that 37th programming in me is like, no, you need to be listening to what I'm listening to. You need to be educating yourself on these social issues. And like, you're like, no, you need to be educating yourself on these higher issues. And it's like realizing that part of us that tells us to be taking other people's inventory, that part of us that tells us we need to systemize or homogenize or all get on the same page is a dying construct that isn't going to matter. And so that's kind of the tricky part of podcasting now is it's fun to, and we are going to gain a lot from listening to each other, but we are going to have to lose the part that tells us that you have to believe exactly what I believe. You can listen to this podcast and hear our perspective. And if it goes, fuck, I was dealing with a lot of shame about going back to smoking weed or not being able to quit smoking weed, or I was dealing with a lot of shame about wanting to be vegan and not being able to be vegan. And, like I couldn't get my body to do it or whatever. This was helpful for me to hear someone else's perspective telling me I didn't need to do this, then like that might be for you. It's on the frequency for you. But if you're like, I smoke weed every day and I fucking love it and it's great for me, then this idea coming from us should just roll straight past you as like, this one's not for me, And I think as we lose that puritanical rigidity and tribalism, we will be able to be in community with a wider gradient. I don't think you're going to have, like right now, in order to be in resonance with someone, you have to fucking believe the same shit because not because that's what resonance means, but because we still have so much puritanical rigidity programs into us. So as we start to lose that, I think we will become better and better and better at being in community. But what in community means is going to be different than it currently means.
Yeah.
It's not, we are not going to be united by everyone being told they have to show up the exact same way. We're going to be united by like resonance. It's just going to be a feeling that we have, and we might have different belief systems, but my belief system will have zero impact on how you show up in life because we will get rid of tribal ideas like legislating. It's like, if you don't want an abortion, don't get an abortion. Your belief system being a fucking like law telling me what to do with my body, like we will understand that is crazy thinking. Yeah. But we will also lose the false security of, well, we have to make sure that everybody wears their seatbelt or that everyone uses the stop sign. It's like, no, you're going to be in charge of navigating people not using the stop sign. Like you're going to have to take agency over yourself. But if you're operating purely out of feelings, you don't need a physical stop sign to keep you safe. You need the vibe telling you move, don't move, you know?
Exactly.
It's such a different way of being that like, it's inconceivable, I think, in many ways, even to us, because I do catch us a lot on the podcast proselytizing our belief, because I do still believe everyone should be sober most of the time. I do believe that. I also simultaneously know that I only believe that because it's my perspective, and it's hard for me to understand that other things work for other people. And so I know those two things at the same time, but it's like, I am judgmental about it. I understand that at this point, understand that judgment is stupid and that it doesn't matter, So when I'm doing a session with someone and they're talking about that, I just talk about my bias first. I go, it's just a heads up, I have a bias. I have the same thing about like, I just told people stop booking sessions with me if you're trying to manifest getting a management or something, because I just have a bias against that. And if you still need to play that out, I can't tell you that, but my bias is going to get in the way of me being able to help you create something that I think is stupid.
Yeah.
So I'm just probably not the person to talk to about that. But I am very open to a lot of things, and I am very open to people not being sober. I say that, but I'm like kind of scraping the bottom of the barrel because I do meet people where they're at. Anyway, I have to go to the bathroom.
I do too.
I oscillate between these two things where sometimes I have a very clear perspective, and that actually makes for better podcast, to be honest. But then other times I am too aware of the paradoxes, and I'm too aware of the two things being true at the same time. And that's probably more authentic to me in my day-to-day life. Even if I'm like rigid, stuck in a point, like, no, it's this. It doesn't take me very long to be like, I can to zoom back out, right? It makes for horrible podcasts.
Yeah.
Like even in that moment before the break where I'm like, I do have prejudices and judgments about this. And then it only takes me a second to be like, well, I kind of don't though. Like I am actually someone that can just like meet people where they're at. And I'm actually not a very judgmental person at all. I think because I've been every flavor of shitbag. So I actually have a very wide pool of tolerance. And especially if it's not going to affect my life. I think people in my personal life not being sober has an impact on me because then I'm, deal with the loneliness of being the only sober person in the room. But then there's also just like things that come with people not being sober that the people around them have to deal with, which, I have that karmically coming anyway.
I think your life lesson, you just had a lot of lessons around, altering and sobriety. So that's like why you're pretty rigid on it, because that is your frequency. Those are things that you've learned. But then at the same time, you can hold paradox and be like, some people are not on that same lesson path, and they can dip in and out of altercations in a positive way,
Yeah, I love altercations. I love that.
Altercation. Paradox is the thing that to me is like when I love paradox, and it is hard to podcast in that, like talking about that consistently, because there's no pointed direction to talk on.
Yeah.
But it is the nature, I think, of like the transition we're in, like getting into a fourth density, some higher density of experience that is, as far as I understand, not in linear time anymore. Like paradox is the ground level of it. Being able to see two things being true at the same time. And what does that mean? Every time I get to a paradox where I am rigid and then I get convinced, I'm like, oh no, wait, that other thing is true too. It does automatically, I feel my awareness zoom out and you really go wide, and you can't ground with it because like you can't pick a side. And there's something to that then when you start to just see reality like every day like that, it becomes more and more virtual, where you're like, just whatever side you want to choose, you're going to see the world that way. And then never bending too much into a bias allows you to hold paradox. And that's a new space of awareness, which I think is fourth density or Cross the Sleeping Phoenix.
Yeah. It does just seem like reality is going to become about awareness, like more than anything else. And we are in this like human doing is what the Cross of Planning was. And the Cross of Sleeping Phoenix is like, and I would say third density was human doing. And then we're going into this human being where it is just awareness, and it's becoming the point, and we're still bringing this extra masculine stuff in.
It's so hard to decondition. That's the thing. It's like there's an understanding that can occur in the mind, and then actionably moving through the reality to it's like it's just trying to become aware of where those rigidities are, and then seeing like, oh, that's just a deep condition. Like that tribal thing is like deep within the root of survival. If the tribe does not like me, I die. And that's like, it's so present in everything that we do. Even though we're healing and becoming aware, it's still there. And that like the more you recognize it, for me, it lightens, but it's still there. And I think it's just a part of the process. And I think that like it is okay to be human and be messy and mess up and just learn the lessons. It's part of the thing, as having to kind of tread your way through it and find, your individuality through that. But I don't think that's going to like, I think it's getting easier and easier as we encroach on this kind of real transition, whether it's 2027 or 2030. That's like a wave, like we're feeling the water kind of pull out, and trying to adjust to that is just going to be kind of clunky for a bit,
One thing, just to encourage people who are freaked out by what seems like the rise in totalitarianism or whatever, the more I study, it just isn't, there's just not going to be any gas in the tank for it.
Yeah, no way.
The 37th gate going away, I don't want to ruin the whole lesson for Monday, but the 37th gate going away, that gate specifically was really ripe. I mean, the entire system of the cross of planning combined with the cross of the Maya was really ripe because it was naturally so hierarchical and tribal. It was really ripe for like oligarchies to come in and take over. And the cross of Sleeping Phoenix is so, the way that the people in this community are just like their consciousness is almost kind of not captured, but just wants to be thinking about consciousness all the time is really the energy. It's really about consciousness. I can also overlay this on top of the book Robes, where the premise of reality just becomes developing the human potential. And there just really isn't a place, like, unless they successfully get people to upload their consciousness to something else, this realm just isn't going to energetically support that. It doesn't matter what it looks like right now, because there's still some cross of planning in the tank, and there will still be some cross of planning, I think, enough to try to pull something like that off for maybe another 5 years or something.
I think, yeah, and I agree, but sorry to throw another paradox in, but they're like the concept of fourth density is happening to the earth no matter what, like, and that, so there's going to be, everything is going to go into that realm. And I've heard through the Cassiopaeans, there's like this idea that that totalitarianism, whatever,
I can never say it either,
that energy is trying to, there's not much gas in the tank left, but they're trying to keep control over those that like can't get into their own power and get up to that frequency of, let's say it, STO, STS, like just self-empowerment and wanting to share with others. Trying to capture people on the fourth density level, which is half ethereal, half physical. It's this cross the Sleeping Phoenix. It's vibes that there's, potential that is occurring in the way that we see like the deception within spiritual movements and things that, should be helping people grow and expand individually. There's a lot of it that is still hierarchical and puritanical. It's everywhere. And I think that's part of, for me, I'm seeing the deception and the trap that like can occur on a fourth density level that I don't think is going to be very successful. But as far as I understand it, still in fourth density, there is a binary of positive and negative polarities.
Yeah, I get to be clear. If you are looking for someone to rule you, there will be someone to rule you. That's what you're going to
get. Yeah.
The themes are going to be around personal power. So if you have not figured out a way to like take your own agency and guide yourself, that doesn't mean you can't listen to someone on a podcast talk about it. But if you are super engaged with the idea of a government or whatever, then yeah, you might experience, I guess, because there is an element of you that wants to experience that because you're tethering to it.
It's not good or bad.
It's not a mandatory experience.
Right.
And there will be a split, I believe, in which many people will be living through living hell and other people will be living in paradise. And that will not be something you can clearly map according to privilege or whatever the stories were in the cross of planning. It's going to be perspective. It's going to be vibe. And so if you believe, like, and this is where there are traps in this, the system is collapsing. The system we have known is collapsing. Paying too much homage to the caste system that existed in the cross of planning is a bit of a matrix trap, because it's not circumstantial. It is the energy of this is the story you tell yourself about it. And if the story you tell yourself about it is that I am not governable, I am not going to be ruled, I am not going to go along and be food for this thing, I am going to focus on my own survival and my own power, stepping into my own power. There is going to be a world for you to live in where you're not being dominated, but you have to find the part of you that wants to be dominated, that wants to participate in these stories. And I probably get yelled at for this. And I just, at this point, I can't keep coddling this fucking idea, because I'm like, coddling this idea is literally just helping people stay trapped. And so, no, you're not going to involuntarily enter into 1930s Germany or whatever the fucking story is, but you do have to face like where your narratives are around power and why you believe that you have rulers. Like, why do you believe that? Because the energy is mass divestment from that idea. And the energy that is coming is like a mass push towards personal power and decentralization. So that is absolutely where the wind is blowing, and you can absolutely ride that wave easily. Honestly, easily. But you have to find the parts of you that are attached to the idea of having a ruler. The idea, like, the question is not, how do I get the ruler? How do we get a ruler in here that'll let me have rights? Yeah. No, the question is, why do I believe my rights are assigned to me by someone else? Yes. Like, that's the fucking glitch. And so I would imagine that people listening to this podcast are already pretty engaged in personal power, because I think we would be annoying to people that are not. I do think a lot of people listen to this podcast that find it annoying, and that's good for you maybe. But the wind was blowing toward something that was very easily oligarch friendly. The wind is not, the background frequency does not support that now. You have to actually put effort into being dominated in the new thing. Yeah. I guess is what I'm trying to say. And many people are.
Yeah. And all I'm saying is like that's an option. Still exist.
Yeah, because I'm not saying it's going to be inherently good now. Right. I'm just saying, like, the wind was blowing in a way that supported centralized control, and when it was fully blowing that way, the peasants were into it. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. Like, the thing now where everyone's like, I hate this, I hate the system, the oligarch. We couldn't even see the oligarchs 20 years ago. That's how fucking that's how much the wind was blowing their direction. It's just simply not now. So,
and you can see it everywhere. People are not taking the like little tricks that the power controllers used to pull. It's like everybody, and it's funny because like that's where you can see there's no gas left in the tank. None of the tricks are working, and a lot of people see the moves and then eject themselves from it, and which is a process. It takes a while to like really get off that drug. But you can see so many of the things like just not working, and then them scrambling to try to get a different deception played out. Yeah. Which is why it's chaos right now. And so many traps of deception and getting people to fight against each other. It's literally everywhere. And that's the chaos. That's like when this energy is changing and going to a new one, they're gonna fight till the last moment and to try to capture people. So it is very easy to just not play into that if you can get the narrative straight.
Yeah, I mean, the biggest spectacle of all right now is politics. And I think it was, a wise strategy to take Trump out for 4 years and then put him back, because he is the greatest capturer of attention that they've had in a really long time. And they are just inundating people with news of like rights being taken. And the purpose of that is to make you feel like that is something that can happen, to make you feel like you have no agency. Like all the oligarch talk and stuff, that's all coming from them. Like they are putting out the message. Like, yeah, I feel like people don't think criminal enough to understand the criminals that are dominating you. Like they have to trick you into dominating you, because like from a universal law standpoint, it has to be consensual. And so they have to show you, and by getting people convinced there's a good team and a bad team. Some people think the red team is a good team. Some people think the blue team is a good team. And getting you to think that like the way that you fight fascism is through voting is like very smart, actually, because then you just get people to think they only have one tool in their toolbox. And then you also, you get people to think, I don't know, like the right thinks it's the liberal elite. Is that what they call them? And then the left thinks it's the oligarchs. But then they only think that those things exist when one team is in I know, it's very smart. It's very smart. But then they inundate you with, here's all the horrible things that are happening to other people so that you feel increasingly more powerless and that there's nothing that you can do. And you could just divest. And if the masses divest, like the masses are what is holding it up. And so that's what's going to happen is divestment, whether you like it or not. Just similar to the way that maybe 10 years ago, you could really care about building your career and now you can't be bothered. You don't have agency over that. Your body's burning out under the pressure of it. The reason your body's burning out is because there's no gas in the tank. And so the divestment's coming, whether you like it or not. You're going to run out of energy to try to fight this thing. Most people will. And when you stop fighting it, you stop giving it power, and it just kind of stops being. It's literally just a bully in a lunchroom. And if all the kids just started ignoring the bully, then the bully just
has no power.
Has no power
to feed on.
And
you can't be fed on then.
I know that maybe sounds like a privileged take or something. I'm speaking from the perspective of like energetically investing, and I get that in the physical reality in the current moment, it seems as if that's where the power is. But the cross of Sleeping Phoenix and fourth density, whatever, is just going to force you to face the fact that power is no longer in the tribe, it's in the individual. And reality is going to force you to face that one way or another. You can either do it through just really putting a lot of time and energy into getting into your power, or you can put it into trying to fight the external power until you're just forced to face that it was in you the whole time.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't remember what made me get on that rant, but I mean, I'm just staying on that rant, to be honest. So one more thing on the puritanical thing. So last week so an example of like, sometimes I just don't have the energy to talk about the entire paradox that's actually in my mind. And I was like, I think tired, exhausted when we recorded the second half of last week's episode. I think the music thing can very easily, as an example of something where our like, we have so much fundamentalism still in our culture and so much puritanical stuff that, when I was a Christian, I didn't listen to secular music because I don't know what the fuck it would make you want to sin or something. I don't remember why we weren't supposed to do it. And then I do go through superstitious phases where I'm thinking about the lyrics of music. And I don't know why that only happens to me in phases. It could literally be just, it's times where I'm tired and, I don't have enough energy. It could be times where maybe it's not a good idea for me. But I don't think listening to a Taylor Swift song or a Lady Gaga song is going to pull you into the Matrix or whatever. Nor do I think pumped up kicks made kids shoot up schools. I don't think you believe that either. And my 2 cents actually on like, the example that I used was Taylor Swift and the sheer amount of songs in which she's the victim in relationship dynamics. I think for someone who's in that dynamic where they've just been cheated on or they've just been broken up with or ignored in a relationship, it's nice to have that music to express the way that you're feeling on that frequency. It does also reinforce, like there was a point where I wanted to write songs about like interdependence, to like reinforce a different way of looking at relating. But the reality is that she's writing music that is for the cross of planning, and the cross of planning has this very codependent, I think, stupid way of looking at relationships in which there's a good guy and a bad guy, and, people aren't living up to the commitment or whatever. Very 37th Gate again. I think my lens through which I'm going to be looking at things for every podcast is whatever class I'm about to teach. But I also don't think like that there's a very clear and direct rule that we should be living by as far as what you should listen to, not listen to. I don't like Katy Perry's music because it gets stuck in your head and it's annoying. Like, I find it frequency annoying. Someone in the comments talked about, did say they were a Katy Perry fan, so we have at least one. And Lady Gaga. I actually like Lady Gaga's as an artist. I'm not like super into her, but I was fucking obsessed with A Star Is Born, and she's very talented, and I don't really subscribe to all that dumb fucking satanic rhetoric. But some of her music does get stuck in my head. I find it less grating. I just think I don't like Katy Perry's vibe at all in any way. I don't really feel that way about Lady Gaga. I don't feel that way about every pop star. I went and sat through the Eras tour, like, in the movie theater. So my 10-year-old, I think at the time, could watch it. And I was actually I was, of course, sitting through it, doing her human design and texting Kelsey about Taylor Swift's human design. Found out she was a fifth line. So then I was a little more open to, like, oh, maybe I'm projecting onto this person. But weeks to get those fucking songs out of my head. Weeks. And then I do just go, it's the earworm part that I do just go, yeah, I just don't know about having a fucking song stuck in your head on a loop that is just reinforcing victimhood in relationship. But if I love the song, I'm going to listen to the song, you know? But I tend to, and this is the superstitious part of me, like, if I'm going through a loss or I'm grieving, man, I whip out the Radiohead. You know, I love to get into that big emotional crying fucking music. I tend to avoid it when I'm not in that space, and that's probably maybe mildly superstitious of me. But yeah, I just don't think I think that conversation, because we were kind of tired and didn't get into the nuances, is maybe an area in which we're not actually, like, strictly.
Yeah, I'm not strict about it at all, and I appreciate it. I got a couple comments about Pumped Up Kicks specifically, like, people that were like, that song, you know, changed my life and it was so great. And why I liked it was that the contrast of such a sweet sounding music that was, like, uplifting with dark lyrics. And I love art that is contrasted like that, because it kind of brings up paradox. It makes you think about things in a different way. It's the same way comedians can talk about something very dark and make you laugh about it. It pulls you into the problem at hand in a way that it's more balanced, and so you can actually think through things a little more clearly. And I appreciate that, and that's where I've always been with that song, and with my band in general. It's nothing that I was like, I'm not regretful of any of it, that I feel like we've programmed people. I think what I was trying to communicate, that it's, like, difficult to communicate because it's very nuanced, is a subtle aspect that I've just learned more and more just through frequency, understanding frequency and vibration, and the human experience being frequency and vibration, that they're interconnected in a way that I think is really fascinating and helpful to understand. Like, through my experience with music, it's helped me understand my own life and consciousness and how we connect and all of those things. And I think what I was trying to communicate is it's a paradox. Like, there is subtle things that, like, are instilled into music that oftentimes are a frequency-based thing that, like, a lot of people, depending on your awareness, like, you don't pick up on. And you just go with, well, this is making me emotionally feel something, so it's great. And that is true. Like, I have the same thing when I'm feeling sad. I like listening to sad songs, and they help me through it. If I'm really happy and I listen to a sad song, it's, like, grating, and I don't want to go there because I'm not in that frequency. And so it's subjective too. Like, art is just straight subjective. There's no good or bad art. And so I think what I was trying to communicate is a subtlety. I've had a more subtle awareness of artists that are making art whatever level of awareness that they're at is like what's going to be coming into the music. And if someone is at a one-sided like pursuit of needing external validation and becoming famous, they're going to follow trends and kind of homogenize. And when you get to a certain level of influence over the culture, these other subtle negative forces can come in and play with what you're doing in a way that's just like most big artists like don't have control over the whole process. There's a producer here, there's a mixer there, there's a masterer there, and then it goes through a compression with the label, and then it goes out. Like, and I don't think there's a lot of conscious people going, oh, this is a really great song, let's put a frequency in that makes them really take it in, and like it changes their consciousness. It's a subconscious level. It's like a level of awareness. And so that's what I was trying to get into. Like when we made those first songs, I would say my level of awareness was nowhere near what it is now. And so I'm realizing, oh, there were like blind spots. And interesting, what does that mean? You know, like, could there have been subtle things within our music because there was a lot of people involved in it and we couldn't control that entire process. And I do think that there's something with the modern digital equipment, especially going into AI, there's something in there that is not necessarily harmonic with where we're going. Do I think is there music that is? Yes. Do I think those people even know that they're doing that? No. But it's their level of awareness and their intention when they're making the music is in a pure place of like uplifting. But that can even be like still biased and one-sided for some other desire to be seen as like someone that uplifts people with their music, and I'm spiritual, you know. There's a lot of these like new spiritual artists that are just like kind of cheesily saying like manifestation loops that are like, I'm all powerful, that's like not it either, I think. And so, you know, yeah, we probably didn't have energy to like really lay out the subtlety and the nuance of what I was trying to speak to. I'm not saying music is like people that are not conscious and are making music is inherently bad. I listen to such a wide array of music that really does something to me, and I don't think those people are necessarily conscious, and there might even be negative frequencies in there, but in the moment that I'm in, it does something. And I just have becoming more sensitive to that. Like when I'm listening to playlists or hearing music on the radio, there's just an automatic thing that's like, I want more of this, or it's not for me. And most of the stuff that I want more of, like, it is something that when I even need, like, I need to ground or I need like inspiration, there's a certain, like, at any given moment, there's like 5 songs that I know I can go play and it raises my frequency. It gives me goosebumps. It makes me like, I feel energy coming off of me.
Yeah.
And I don't know what that is. Like, and that's what I'm trying to understand more of, is like, what is going on here? And what, is there a frequency? Is it the lyrics? I don't pay attention to lyrics, but a lot of the times when I go back with songs that have really elevated me and I listen to the lyrics, they are neutral in a way that, you know, Mark, my old bandmate, was very good at making lyrics neutral in the sense that the listener can bring their own issues or their own problems of their perception of reality and use the lyrics to apply to them. And it's like, and that's an art. It's very hard to do. You know, some of the Taylor Swift stuff, it's like, yeah, all I can apply these lyrics to is like my heartache and the breakup or my relationship.
Right.
Most of the lyrics that I listen to, the music that is resonant with me, it's just the tones of the music. But then I go back and look at the lyrics. I'm like, oh, these are either really applicable to like elevating yourself, stepping into your power, but it is very metaphorical and neutral. And some people might apply their heartache or whatever, or some cross-planning fucking idea, and it inspires them. And I would say from the level of awareness that I'm at is like, that's keeping you locked in an old pattern. But for me, that song is like blasting me forward into expanding and higher awareness.
Yeah.
So it's paradoxical, and I just don't think there is one way or the other. the greatest art to me is like rides that line of neutrality where you can bring your own thing to it and it amplifies you. Some songs keep you locked in a certain way of thinking, and I do think a lot of the popular artists have been co-opted in a very subtle way that does that. It keeps
well, you hear a
people
lot of
locked.
artists say, like, the record once they get to the point where the record label's telling them what to make, I think that's probably not,
That's from a desire to make more money, so that there's negativity
when it's like
in it.
when the aim is fame and money. But to me, it's like it just kind of goes back to like I'm not drawn to that music, and I think if you are drawn to that music, then you need to play that out. If I'm going through a breakup and I'm in the phase of the breakup where I feel like the victim or whatever, like I love some fucking Atlantis Morissette or something. There, I tend to not be drawn to that music when I'm not in that space, but it's almost like when in that space, breakup music, Sheryl Crow was another one, like breakup music almost helps you purge it. You know what I mean? It almost helps you work through it. And
some songs, they work for a certain period of your life, and then they don't work later. Once you've expanded and moved on, it doesn't do its thing anymore.
I mean, I remember Let It Happen by Tame Impala felt like the fucking ascension anthem for years.
Yeah,
I'm positive that song's about something like a breakup or something like.
Yeah, and that's what's that's the thing. It's like why art is so great. It's subjective. You can get what you want out of it. That song is like it's one of my go-tos just to get inspired and feel okay with whatever I'm going through. It's so uplifting, and I was super thrown off when I looked more into him and why he made that song and stuff, and I was like, oh, I thought you were fully aware of what you were doing. Like this is this frequency, this is doing something in my body. The lyrics are like perfect. Let It Happen is like all so in alignment.
A lot of his music that seems like it's about ascension or going through an awakening is about him wrestling with fame.
Yeah,
and like the
Kevin
changes to his
Parker's
life.
amazing. I think he's an awesome artist, and I like what I was going to say about artists is I think when I look at most artists that I'm inspired by, and specifically the songs that I resonate with, when you try to do research of like how they wrote the song, most of them they don't know. Like they're like, you ask them, some interviewer or journalist is like, so what were you thinking when you wrote the song? Like, why? And usually it's like, I don't know. I was just feeling in the mood, or I was like hurt, and I went into the studio and it came out of me.
Right.
It just happened. And that's where I think like that's how people will catch a very neutral, inspiring thing that actually empowers people. When someone's coming in with like an idea that I want to write a song about a heartache or a specific thing, it muddles the channel, and it's less likely to be like universally inspiring and uplifting. It's got like some kind of bias distortion through it. Can you still make good art that way? Of course. But I've recognized a pattern that most songs that are really impactful for me, the person like obviously channeled it, and if they're not aware of it, they just kind of were very open in the moment, and the thing came out of them.
Right.
And that's how a lot of Foster the People stuff is written. It did, some of it not, but some of it, the best of it, I think, was really much like that. And it became harder to do that when you had like infrastructure to uphold and fans to appease. It's harder to be very open and not have an agenda with the music. But I just think like when I'm doing sessions with artists, like that's the sweet spot, is to try to like hone your craft in well enough that you are a useful vessel to like be a filter, and then be open to emotion coming through and allowing the thing to just come out, is where I think no matter what kind of frequency manipulation is happening on the back end through a label or something, it's still going to get across. And I'm very into like new technology and trying to be conscious of frequency manipulation on some level to, influence the music more positively on a subtle level. But even that, I think you can get caught up in like, I'm trying to make music that heals people, which is a little bit of a
savior complex,
self-serving complex. So it's such an art, and I think it's a lot of paradox when talking about that. So just to be clear, it's not, I don't think my band is like some devilish music that's programming people. I think it's primarily positive, but I do also notice and hold paradox for things that we were not aware of at the time that could have seeped their way through. And when you look at pop music, it's very clear to me a lot of that is kind of controlled in a deceptive way, or just locking people into unhealthy patterns of thinking.
Right, but then it comes down to how you engage with it, right?
Yeah, and that's, I think, the most important thing is like, it's just following intuition, whatever makes you feel good. Like, I'm not into heavy metal music, but a lot of people like heavy metal music, and it inspires them, and it creates action in them to do things great in the world. And so it's all subjective, but I just think it's an interesting thing to talk about, this frequency and the potential of distorted elements like everywhere.
Yeah. I'm running out of steam.
Well, I think this has been a really informative podcast, and I think we've carved our way into a paradox world where it's hard to talk about anything really pointed right now.
Yeah, it's just like one episode we'll be like, is this? And then the next episode it's like, oh, they're on the other side, which is authentic to how these conversations are.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to circle back to a couple of the pieces of feedback we got from the eating animals episode, but
oh yeah,
I don't know if I have energy for this right now. I need to eat. You need
to go eat some meat.
Yeah, sweet potatoes actually.
Oh yeah, we're having sweet potato.
Yeah, we didn't even discuss the fact that we had just come back from New York on the last episode because we were working through some being tangled up in each other's nervous system. When we edited that, I took out so much of it just because it was like details that nobody gives a shit about. But we do sweetly apologize to each other. We did off the mic. Then we were listening back to it. We were laughing at us kind of arguing. But then you were like, oh, I wish I would have apologized on the microphone.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just got back from 3 weeks of touring, and I had gotten one piece of Patreon out during that 3 weeks. And so the last week has been nonstop talking into microphones. And then of course in true manifesting generator form, I was like, yeah, starting the course exactly 1 week after I get back makes perfect sense. So I'm actually have not had a rest day in a month. I probably have had one here or there, but
yeah, it's what you do when you go off on another timeline temporarily and come back to yours. You got a bunch of catching up to do.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure I would like to unpack that on the mic at some point, but we'll leave this at this. And life slows down quite a bit, thank God. Next week we'll be finished with soccer playoffs and the other kids play, and I'm never going back to stand-up comedy, and we'll slow down and have more to say. I think we both have sessions open.
Yeah, I just opened up a bunch more sessions because we do have a lot more free time coming up. So if you want to talk about creativity or projector stuff, I am really like activated on creative to creative conversations right now. So just throwing that out there. But of course, I'm still available to talk about human design or just consciousness in general. I have that tier as well, or that session. If you want to talk about the Wave series and Cassiopaeans and lizards.
I don't really like to talk about creativity, so I'm really glad that you're into that. I prefer talking about relationships or personal power or creating more empowered narratives or solving problems or helping people make decisions. But I really love talking about relationships. And then the 2027 course is going on live right now. You can join at any point during the live version of it if you want to be a part of it as it's unfolding, but it'll be cheaper if you want to just wait until we have archived it. It's $227 right now. It'll be $165 in June. We did the first one the other day. I love working with Kelsey because she knows so much mechanical stuff of human design. I learned so much myself. I was like quiet for the whole class because I was like learning it as I went. But starting this Monday, we're starting to talk about the actual, like, how this impacts you as a person in your day-to-day life, which is much more my department. So that's it. Love you. Bye.
Love you. Bye.